Welcome, welcome, one and all. Give thanks for this beautiful Tuesday. Ya te mabuhay and aloha to everybody out there today. Welcome to today's super exciting Medicine Tribe television episode with the great and wonderful Marianne Williamson. It was love that abolished slavery. It was love that gave women suffrage. It was love that established civil rights. And it is love that we need now. That's a quote from her new book, The Politics of Love, a handbook for a new American revolution. Best-selling author, spiritual leader, politician, and activist, founder of Project Angel Food, Peace Alliance, and just a generally all-around amazing woman. We're going to talk to Marianne Williamson today. And so check it out. Let's get her on here, shall we? Let's see. Where are you, Marianne? Looks like she's still tuning in, so it's going to be a good chat. I'm excited to talk to her and get her wisdom on the current climate and check in on that level. Let's see if she has tuned in. There she is. Ooh, this is great. Yes. That you. Now let me do it. Come on now. All right. Sending the request in. It's okay. It's all happening, my friends. It's all happening. Good to see you all here. Thank you for tuning in. While we wait for her to connect, I'll grab a glass of water because I forgot to do that. Oh, Marianne, 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 Marianne. She's coming to chat today. All right. We've sent the request in, so we'll tune in. Thanks to everybody that joined me on Sunday service. Had a really good time there as well. Had a great time with the friends over there at Reggae Rise Up yesterday. Thank you all for being a part of that. The vibes were high. The vibes were high. Hey, Wendy. Okay. Well, I sent, oh, there she is. Okay, here we go. Let's try it again.
Hey!
Yay!
It took a minute. How are you?
It's all good. I am so good, and I'm so happy to see your lovely face and feel your energy today.
Oh, thank you. It is so nice to see you. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, well, it's been a minute since I've seen you. It's been quite a minute, and you've been taking on the world, and you've been bringing us your light. How are you today? How are you feeling?
You know, Nahko, I'm going through what everybody is going through, except on the other hand, there are millions and millions of people going through something much worse than I'm going through. And I'm thinking about all the things that I'm sure you're thinking about and that all the people watching are thinking about. And it feels to me as though there are two simultaneous realities here. One is heartbreaking, infuriating, horrifying. And the other one is a kind of forced global pause that has a lot of us thinking at a much deeper level about things that perhaps we've been avoiding thinking about, whether in our personal lives or about our country and our world. It does feel to me like this is rocking America in a way perhaps we needed to be rocked.
Right. Yeah, it's a rude awakening of sorts, right? Um, I I have said this before in this past month that I often every day go back and forth between a sense of guilt, perhaps, and then it turns into this sort of anger that we have this system that isn't prepared to take care of vulnerable people in this country. And how dumb is that, being the richest nation in the world, and we care more about the economy of the world. We care more about the corporations than we do about people, regular people.
Your music has been pointing this out eloquently and brilliantly for quite a while now. The things that are being revealed here were in plain daylight for people who wanted to see them. I've said often that any public issue will ultimately make it to your private door. You know, we had a situation where 40% of Americans could not afford a unexpected $400 expenditure. This has been true for a while.
Right.
So the day came when that $400 expenditure was due. So we have been skating, once again, as your music has made very clear, we've been skating on very thin ice for a long time. And I think it's important that we realize, and you know, that's what adults do. Adults look straight and directly into the things we need to look at. There's been an immaturity. There's been a social and political immaturity on the part of too many people. But I think that's ending with this. You know, it's a pandemic, but it could have been something else. It could have been a nuclear disaster. It could have been a weather catastrophe, because our lack of preparedness for this is no different than our lack of preparedness in so many areas, because as you just pointed out, over the last few decades, we have put short-term private sector profit so much before long-term public sector good. And this is giving a lot of us, all of us, if we choose, the opportunity to think really deeply about all this because of the changes that will need to be made on the other side of it.
Absolutely. And it's like that part about the climate crisis. I was just writing about that today, actually, and how this is the opportunity, if we want to take it, to be pushing for and not slowing down our demand for climate justice, wherein the two go hand in hand, where we can't be fighting a health crisis without thinking about the climate crisis at the same time. Would you say that is to be true?
Well, they emanate from the same error, and we need to look at this holistically. We don't know for sure where this virus came from, whether it came from a lab or whether it came from a wet market. But no matter where it came from humanity's irreverence. We've been irreverent towards each other, irreverent about life on Earth, irreverent about the planet, irreverent about animals. And that same denial about what we're doing that is behind this virus and our inept response to it one way or the other is obviously on display with how we look at the environment. A lack of scientific development on the part of public resources, public investment in the scientific research, the technological work we need to do for the development of green energy and so forth. The fact that we have a system, and this has been true for a long time, that if God forbid something goes wrong, is more prepared to protect the few than to protect the many. And that is as true of weather catastrophes as it is of everything else. So these are painful things to look at, but, you know, once again, going back to your music, you've been highlighting these things. This is, anybody who knows your music knows the cry of anguish about these things did not begin with this situation. There are millions of people, you know, we talk about everyone being in lockdown, excuse me, there are millions of people who have been in economic lockdown for a very long time.
Absolutely. 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 I had a couple questions I did want to ask you. I know you've got a new book out, which I haven't had a chance to get a copy or read it yet, but I did
I'd
read
be
some.
honored to send it to you.
Oh my gosh, please. I would love that.
Yes, I feel embarrassed you don't already have it. It's called The
Oh,
Politics. I should have sent it to you a long time ago. I always feel like it's bogus or presumptuous to send somebody my book.
Oh, are you kidding me? I would love to read that stuff. It's such a gift. It's like having a CD, you know, you can give somebody, here's something, you know, I still look at albums as, you know, full books to read, right? So, but yeah, your book's called Politics of Love, A Handbook for a New Revolution. And I guess I'm curious what your thoughts are. I mean, on another level of what we've just been discussing, but with the current political climate and having endorsed Bernie Sanders and having had all this amazing courage to take on as a presidential candidate, which I know a lot of us were over here clapping and cheering you on because
Thank you.
these terms and this awareness, the spiritual awareness, and these terms and ideas that have been around for so long and have been pushed through your books and through your teachings, you know, they all of a sudden become this very mainstream. They were brought to the mainstream political platform by you, which I'm so grateful for. But I guess my question is, what is this new revolution that your book tells us about, and does that tie into this kind of like interesting pairing of an election year and a global health crisis and the trauma that, you know, I think has sort of surfaced in the wound that we're very aware of?
I was saying, just as I was pointing out before, that your music has been making this cry of the heart for a long time. My work, I have tried to do the same with my work. That's why the alignment with you is so natural, and you're very, very generous playing your music at my announcement of my campaign, because nobody's music more aligns with my political platform than yours. What I have been writing about for decades, what I made as my platform, what I call a humanitarian agenda of my presidential campaign, is exactly what I'm saying now. It's just that I think many people realize this now. Or if not, you know, I think that what I heard a lot on the campaign was, Marianne, what you're talking about is the future. And I remember saying to people, how long do you think we have? We must shift from an economic to a humanitarian bottom line. We must stop withdrawing investments in the public good. You know, we had 47 pandemic centers, and he had closed 37 of them. We have been withdrawing investment in all kinds of research that would have, and scientific and technological development that would create a sustainable and thrivable 21st century. So the clock has been ticking, Nahko. And I think for myself as a candidate, and for millions of people, there has been the sense something's going to happen. We were moving in such an unbelievably unsustainable direction, because a sociopathic economic system, and I call it sociopathic for a reason, sociopaths have no remorse, they have no empathy, they have no regrets. And so for the last 40 years, we have allowed a form of capitalism. Now, I'm not anti-capitalist, but what happened 40 years ago was such a break between capitalism and any sense of ethical and moral consideration for the planet or for people or for animals. And then once such an undue financial influence on the part of those industries that it represents, whether it's health insurance companies, big pharmaceutical companies, gun manufacturers, food companies, big ag, oil and gas, defense contractors, you know who they are. They're a corporate aristocracy. And it's not that it's made up of immoral people. These are not people who wake up every morning and think about how they could hurt indigenous tribes. But they are people who wake up every morning and don't think it's their responsibility to think one way or the other about those indigenous tribes. And if you have that kind of amorality, it will lead to immoral results. And then once their financial interests had such an undue influence in Congress, our Congress has basically become a system of legalized bribery. That's what politics has become in America. where too often our government is a handmaiden to these corporate forces, and to the point where it does more to advocate for and fund short-term profit of these companies than it does to fund and advocate for us, as is on full display with the unbelievable way this bailout is being carried out. The bailout is excessive. So the same people, you know, I found this on my campaign. It was like, who's qualified? And of course, what the political system says is, unless you've had at least 10 years working within the system that drove us into this ditch, you're not qualified to drive us out of the ditch. And I'm like, no, that's sort of the point. That's sort of the point. And so you see it on full display now that, I mean, it's obscene. We have doctors and nurses without protective gear, governors begging for ventilators, respirators, tests, medicine. Meanwhile, we're bailing out oil and gas.
Right.
It is obscene, Nahko, and you have been saying it's obscene. I've been saying it's obscene. But, you know, I'll tell you something about politics that's interesting. In art, in spirituality, even in business to a certain extent, radical truth-telling is prized.
Mm-hmm.
In politics, radical truth-telling is inconvenient.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found in my campaign was that they have ways of dealing with inconvenient people who they deem inconvenient to their conversation.
Right.
I became a wacko crystal lady, right?
Yeah, that pissed me off. I'm not gonna lie. You know, like to
thank
see
you.
them just make a mockery of you was so disheartening. And you know, they just pigeonholed you into this place and ran you over. And like it was, yeah, it was such a bummer. But I mean, you have said this before around that the political crisis, it's not just political crisis, that it's a moral and spiritual crisis. And so how do we even begin addressing the dysfunction?
You know, there's a saying that every problem comes bearing its own solution.
Yeah.
What's happening now, you know, Blaise Pascal, the French philosopher, said that every problem that we have stems from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. We are a very adrenaline-driven society, almost addictively so. And a lot of the running around we do is, at the deepest level, a way of avoiding some of the discomfort that comes along with seriously thinking about your life and your relationship to the planet and to the world. It's not that we don't know what to do, Nahko, in every single area, whether it's medicine, science, the environment, children, economics. There we have in our country alone, and certainly around the world, but even in our country alone, we have the people, the geniuses, the best practices. We know what to do. The problem is that our government does more to fund and to advocate for the problem creators than the problem solvers. What we need to do is to elect people to actually have the levers of power. We have the people who know what to do. We have the non-governmental organizations. We have the private foundation. We know, actually, this is not, I mean, it is rocket science, but we have the rocket scientists. The problem is our government is in the hands, the financial, so into corporatocracy, hook, line, and sinker. You have another political party that wants to have it both ways. They want to help people, but they help on the periphery. They'll help with the symptom. But too often they don't want to challenge the underlying forces that make all that suffering inevitable. And I've seen, Bernie's seen, others have seen their way of handling people who try to do the radical truth-telling that, in your words, is the real medicine.
Now, you have said, and I quote, "Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure, and it is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us." And I love that so much because I'm, for many reasons personally, but I'm putting an album out next month that the title is called "Take Your Power Back," and I address my own like personal journey into this awakening. And you are such an advocate for returning to love, which I think is imperative to returning to our power. So do you see the symbiosis between returning to our love and returning to our power?
Love is our power.
Yeah.
It's not just that love is the key to getting our power. Love is our power. Our power was not snatched from us so much as we stopped expressing our power. You find your power by using it on behalf of other people. We have been disempowered because we have been tempted to be so self-referenced. Now, I want to make a distinction here between how Americans behave as individuals versus our citizenship. When it comes to our individual lives, we are powerful people in that we are loving people. We are dignified people. We are decent people. I think the average American, I mean, I don't think we're better than anybody else, but I think we are as kind and good and loving. I think the average American does try to live a good life. I think the average American does want to do the right thing. I think the average American does think about things like conscience and character and ethics and loyalty. The problem is that we have withdrawn from the political conversation to such an extent that there is very little conversation when it comes to public policy regarding what is the ethical decision. What is the policy that helps people thrive? What is the policy that people say, what's a politics of love? I'll tell you a politics of love. When there's a hungry child, you feed them. When you have tens of millions of people living in chronic economic anxiety, and this has been going on for a long time, Nahko. We've had 93 million people in America living near poverty. They don't have health care, don't know how their kids are going to go to college, don't know how they're going to get out from under these college loans. So people are living with that tension and anxiety. They can't soar, they can't actualize their dreams, which, by the way, is how you get an abundant economy, is more people able to actualize their own talents and abilities. So what does love do? Love makes a humanitarian bottom line. Love says that our public policy should not be guided by short-term profits for huge corporate interests that are able to lobby Congress to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. Our public policies should be guided by the question, what helps people thrive? Because that's what love is. What can I do for you? Buddy, how can I help? How can I be there for you? You know, Jesus didn't come to the earth and say, love yourself. That's not what he said. He came to the earth and he said, love one another. You know, people get that real confused these days, I've noticed. Not that I love myself. It's about I love you.
Yeah. That's a really great reminder. Thank you for saying that.
There's a popular misconception
as a person, what's that?
There's a popular misconception about that one.
This is true. This is true. I love it when you bring those Marianne isms in there and just like almost dryly like remind us like of the like, oh duh, you know, those things are always the ones that I capture in there. Really good ones.
Yeah, it's all about me.
As a
person, like in the body, when a cell is fully actualized in the body, it exists to collaborate with other cells to serve the healthy function of the whole, the organ it's part of and the organism it's part of, because the body is an ecosystem. Well, so is the planet, so is human civilization. So when a cell in the body forgets that it's here to collaborate with other cells and it disconnects from that natural intelligence, that's what a malignancy is. That's what cancer is. And what's wrong with the human race is we have been affected by malignant consciousness, the malignant thought that it's all about me.
Right.
Not about the planet, not about other people, not about the animals. It's all about me. And that once you go there, chaos is inevitable.
Yeah, and speaking of like that consciousness, I as a person who's been focused on my own mental and spiritual wellness, et cetera, and being a person that suffers from a very short attention span, it's taken me a while to get into meditation, but I've recently gotten into it, and it's been amazing and fascinating. And it's almost, I guess, like a form of prayer, I found. And I know you've been doing these Sunday prayers, meditations on Sundays. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how that experience has been for you?
Well, I think a lot of people are calling for prayer and meditation. The one that I've been talking about is 5 minutes of global silence, meditation, prayer, prayers for a miracle in whatever way that means for us, every Sunday at noon New York City time. And then I have on the list that people can see on my social media what time that is in every other city. Obviously, it's 9 a.m. in Los Angeles, but it's 8:30 p.m. in Tehran. I think it's 6 a.m. in Johannesburg. I have it written on there. But a lot of people are calling for that. And of course, what we need is a strong wave of prayerful and meditative consciousness 24/7. We always do, but we really need it now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because would you say that the role that meditation has a role in our returning to love?
Well, first of all, remember, the love is who we are. And what meditation does, it's like a chiropractic adjustment of the soul. We are fractured. We are living on this planet. It's like I think I mentioned Gandhi's line, the problem with humanity is that humanity is not in its right mind. We talk about mental health issues. I'll tell you the large mental health issue is that the planet is behaving insanely. Human civilization is behaving insanely. You know, we learned about evolution when we were children. And we learned that if a species is behaving in a way that is maladaptive for its survival, then one of two things is going to happen. It's going to mutate and evolve in another direction, or it goes extinct. The problem with our planet is that humanity as a species, we are behaving in ways that are maladaptive for our survival. All of the nuclear bombs, the way we're treating the planet, the way we're treating everything going on now is certainly a perfect example. It is literally maladaptive for our survival. Now, from a spiritual perspective, love will prevail. This too shall pass. Love will prevail because God's will has never not been done. But where free will comes in is that how long that takes and how much suffering has to happen first is completely up to us. Now, the crazy mind, the insane mind, the thinking that dominates the human race is so fear-based, and it begins training us to think insanely, basically, which means lovelessly from the time we're born, that we now live at the behest and at the effect of this fear-based consciousness. What happens when we meditate is that the fear-based consciousness begins to dissolve, and a love-based consciousness, which is the truth of who we are, has a chance to emerge. It never went away, but it's dormant. Right. It's like a file in the computer that is undeletable. But we have taught not to bring it down to the screen. So enlightenment really isn't learning something, it's unlearning the false thinking of the world. That's why a radical truth teller, for instance, in the political sphere, is likely to be called crazy, because the system is crazy. So, of course.
Right. Oh, my goodness. Well, that resonates deeply with me, and I really...
What a crazy idea that we put the children first. What a crazy idea that we proactively wage peace. What a crazy idea that we feed 13 million hungry children. What a crazy idea that we recognize. We have millions of American children who go to school every day, Nahko, in classrooms that don't even have the adequate school supplies with which to teach a child to read. Of course, I'm a big fan of your music, so I know I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. But a child who cannot learn to read by the age of 8 has a very small chance of graduating from high school and a very large chance of being incarcerated someday. These are the realities that have been going on for a long time. Once again, why I call it a sociopathic economic system. Where's the empathy? What are we doing? How in the richest nation of the world, as you were saying before, can this be so? Well, we know why it's so. The issue now is, are the American people going to decide to change it? And we're going to have a big chance to change it in November.
Are you ready? Are you ready? I'm so ready.
I'm so ready to
I'm
hear you
so ready.
sing.
I'm gonna send you some music now because I have some stuff that I think is going to be very appropriate for whatever next campaign we move into. But I think I'm just going to text it to you so that you have it and can listen to it. And I miss you, and thank you so much for chatting with me today. It's been such a pleasure to get to hear your words of wisdom. I've been so anxious to hear your thoughts on what everything that's been going on, and I just missed your energy. So.
Well, Nahko, thank you. And it was my friend Frances Fisher who first told me about you. She said, "You haven't heard Nahko?" I said, "No," and then I stayed up practicing. I stayed up for hours listening to you. And once again, I will never forget how kind and brilliant and generous you were, giving me that send-off to what was really the most important experience of my life so far, other than having my daughter. So I am eternally grateful to you. I'm your hugest fan. And thank you. It was an honor to have a chance to talk to you. Much love to you and to yours. Stay safe.
Thanks, Marianne. Thanks for bringing all your wisdoms and teachings here today and sharing your thoughts with everybody. And I wish you so much love, and I can't wait to actually see you and give you a real hug in person.
Well, that real hug might have to wait for a while, but we can certainly still see.
Yeah, eventually. Eventually.
Thank you. Bye, darling.
All right, darling.
Bye.
Ciao. Woo! That was pretty cool. I was a little, I just wanted to hear her talk, I had tried to have a couple questions prepared, but I was just mostly just like, just tell us, Marianne, what the fuck is going on? And how we're gonna, really return to that power. Woo! Give it up for Marianne. That was very special to get to chat with her. Really special for her to take 30 minutes out of her day to chat with us on Instagram. I feel like there was a lot of great isms in there that I'm going to have to write down later so that I can remember them all and sort of digest them. I'll tell you what, doing these talks has been teaching me a lot. It's like I literally have to take the rest of the day into the next day to digest all this information because, what I'm looking for in these conversations is the person that we're talking to, looking for those gems of wisdom to continue to carry us through, to continue to push us into and trigger us into a real sense of power that we actually have here, not to feel powerless in a time where it's very easy to feel that way. I think, anyway, I just wanted to share that because it's true. Whew. Good chats, good conversations, necessary things. If you don't know much about Marianne, or if you didn't catch part of the chat about her Sunday prayers, it's great to go check that out. I think it's 9 a.m. on the West Coast. And then, of course, there's Sunday service that day, too. So it's big church day, you could say. Yeah, big thanks once again to Marianne for dropping in and sharing some beautiful words and reminders of what's going on, of where we need to be going, and all of that. See, my attention span was just real quick. We know when we were talking, actually, there was an eagle that right as I went live, I looked up and there was an eagle flying over, and I was like, no. Good signs. Nature has her signs, right? Well, my friends, tomorrow is the new moon, and it is Earth Day tomorrow, and it is a new single release coming out. Before I got on this call, I was writing up my intentions that I will be sharing in our email blast and on our socials to go in tandem with the Earth Day events tomorrow, as well as the single release, which is, of course, called Honor the Earth. Perfect timing, right? All right. I'm very excited about this song. So yeah, I spent a good part of this morning writing up this press release that we'll be sharing with you on our socials, and telling you all about this Taurus new moon, what my intentions are, the partnering we're doing with honorearth.org, as well as my thoughts on Earth Day and the continued climate crisis that we are in. So stay tuned for that, and tune in tomorrow, because we'll be announcing this later today, but I'm doing a live AMA Reddit tomorrow as well, and going to be premiering our song tomorrow on Honor the Earth's Instagram page, and sort of driving people to this organization that I've been working with for years, that is raising and directing funds for grassroots Native environmental groups. So please tune in tomorrow for a bunch of fun and awesome, cool things. I want to wish you all a happy new moon in Taurus. I know that it's going to be an interesting one for a lot of people, as Taurus indicates unexpected change, as we're all dealing with currently. So hang on, babies. We're in for the ride of our lives. But as Marianne has reminded us, that it's time to take our power back and take that light and do some good with it. So I love you all very much. Thanks for tuning in today. As always, we'll be posting this episode again in the next day or so, and I'll see you soon. Hope.